how are you? Week 4, we are moving on. All right, guys, week 3 was exciting. There were some really devastating injuries.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo, the very first of them. We're going to get into all of our analysis of week 3. We're going to move right into week 4. We're, already a quarter of the way through the fantasy football season after this week. So
unbelievable. Last week was interesting, definitely, for fantasy scoring, but I think it was a good week, and I'm ready to move on to week 4.
Yeah. Folks, we are the Draftaholics at Draftaholics Pod on all of your social media services. We are evaluating the NFL, teams, and players in the context of a real team because, as they say, the rest is just pretend. I'm your host, at Draftaholic on Twitter. Matt Savoca is my name. And across from me today,
I'm William Spinato, at W Spinato on Twitter. 2 N's, 1 T. On this lovely screen right here, we have Mr.
George Slotin, at George Slotin, Mr. 0-3 in our home league.
Yeah, and that's why we play these weekly and daily fantasy games so that we can make it bigger than your home league that you've had for many years. We're going to see which players, even if they're not on that season-long roster, can win you $1 million, can win you weeks against your friends, and if you have some quick shots like us, win you a few points in that little game there. So, guys, in week 3, I thought one of the biggest things that we needed to talk about was scoring in general being up. And I think for me personally, that has to do with the quality of quarterback play. Now, unfortunately, 49ers fans, I do apologize. We're going to have to go back to CJ Beathard, and that might mean inefficiency. And unfortunately, we might see injuries beyond that. But quarterback play is up around the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also has a little bit to do with the new penalty enforcement in terms of roughing the passer.
Don't even get me started.
It was almost a struggle to watch last night. It was tough to see pretty much a free 15 yards be granted to each offense. And, they were talking about how do you coach that, right? Like, not only how do you tell the players how to tackle, but, like, if you don't know what to expect at the end of each play. It was funny. Who was mic'd up on the Steelers defensive line? One of the pass rushers was mic'd up, and he literally says, "I'm sorry, Ben." Oh, never mind. It must have been opposite. But
yeah, it was on the Buccaneers.
Right,
and he tackled Ben.
Yeah.
He heard
He's
apologized.
saying
He apologized
before the tackle and after the tackle, which that obviously can't be what an NFL player is thinking of, especially when they're backed up right against the end zone. He should be celebrating almost getting safety.
That's more apologies than you see if you bump into somebody on the NQR on the subway.
Exactly. Yes, you don't even expect that as a pedestrian.
No, absolutely not. There's a lot of clamoring that's occurred over the last half decade about rules shifting towards the quarterback, and this is kind of the line. I think this is where the fans speak up and they say, like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was commenting off camera, off air, and saying that it looked like the refs were mad at their bosses. It looked like the refs were told a point of emphasis by their bosses, and they essentially raised their hand and said, that happens on every play, right?
Right.
And the bosses said, okay, call it every play. And so they did.
Right.
It was a bad entertainment product, which stunk because on the first, within the first hour, there was some incredible playmaking skill. Like the Vance McDonald touchdown, that's going to be on the touchdowns of the year.
Yeah, sure.
He threw Chris Conti into the netherworld. It was,
an epic stiff arm. I mean, that was intense. He must really get in the gym and work his arms out. I mean, like, he threw a man down with something.
Yeah, so those are the types of plays, those giant touchdowns, those big, long plays without opportunity that we love to fade on the Draftaholics, but, man, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
So we've got all the good things that you know and love from the Draftaholics this week. We're going to go over our week 3. There was like 2 and 3 combined.
Yeah.
Week 3 hits and misses. We didn't do so well in that one lineup, so let's rule them all. That's okay. And then we're going to have our quick shots and the one lineup that will actually rule it all for week 4. Okay, let's dig into our week 3, I know how to say numbers, review. So we're going to start. Will, why don't you break down the draft for us and tell us who won?
Well, man, you really set me up for that one. Matt,
really nice.
It was a repeat of our places from last time. George came in second, and with about 3/4 of a point less than George, I came in third place. My stack of Tyreek Hill and Rob Gronkowski has been disallowed for this week. It didn't work out for me. I also had Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, and Saquon Barkley, the 3 of which performed beautifully, but not quite enough to slide into second place. George in second had Kamara and Thomas, Antonio Brown, Zeke, and Tom Brady. scoring pretty well, but about 30 points short of Matt in first place.
Feels good.
Gurley and Gordon, I think you had those guys 2 weeks in a row. Then Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, and Drew Bees.
Julio Jones, not the big story of the week, but he still was fine in terms of the wide receiver category. Calvin Ridley obviously got a whole lot of work, a whole lot of touchdowns. Very exciting to see. But
another good week. I think it was fun. I mean, the scoring at wide receiver wasn't as high as we were talking about with the scoring going up across the rest of the league. It's mostly affecting quarterbacks. It's just really interesting to see.
Well, it's also running back receptions way up, running back touchdown receptions way up.
Yeah, so that's splitting out that direction as well. It's interesting.
That's overall efficiency that helps the quarterback, but it's just any receiver that's open. So now let's move on to our quick shots. Our cash smash, that's the player that we expect to be a number one at their position, and you don't need to leave a DFS lineup with them off it. They're that good. Gio Bernard for yours truly, RB9 on FanDuel, RB8 on DK. He hit. Ryan Fitzpatrick, QB3 last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't look like that at the beginning of the game, but he finished out strong.
Yeah. He had some bad picks and then ended up QB3. So what are we complaining about? Dalvin Cook and the Vikings D.
Shocker.
That was a big one. So running back 41 and the defense 22.
Yeah.
That's a miss.
I mean, they got shut down early. It was rough.
Our faded glory. That's a player that is not meeting expectations and is way off in terms of dollars per point. I say that to clarify David Johnson. He was RB18, RB17 on DK, but we need to mention that his price indicates that is an absolute miss.
Right. In
terms of efficiency and dollars per point, that doesn't get it done. So as a fade, that is a hit for him missing. Speaking of misses, Keenan Allen, wide receiver 76 on FanDuel.
Yeah.
That is an unequivocal fade, and that's a hit for George this week. William, even though it was the Thursday night game, you gave us Carlos Hyde, and that couldn't have been wrong.
I didn't know it was his birthday and he was about to have a baby the same night. Obviously, I wouldn't have chosen it.
I love that end zone celebration where he held the ball like a baby.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, not only was he not a fade last week, I think he's got an uptick moving forward with Baker Mayfield. So that's going to be interesting to talk about.
That whole baby ball thing was a T.Y. Hilton creation, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh, well,
yeah, I think so.
Where credit is due, T.Y.
Yeah.
So Hyde is saying T.Y. to T.Y.
Yeah, okay. T.Y. had that post-game interview where he was crying, and it looked like those tears of Noshawn Marino.
The Noshawn tears.
The Noshawn tears, yeah.
So everything is just an evolution of previous NFL players. I love that analysis, Draftaholics. Moving on to the floor play, we have Chris Thompson and Theo Riddick. I had dueling floor plays. Both stunk up the joint, RB63 and RB44, respectively. That is a miss on the floor play. Speaking of misses on floor play, Keelan Cole. We waxed poetic about the Jaguars 1 week too late here.
Yeah.
That's right.
That was bad. Keelan Cole, wide receiver 50. And we got to bring it up. Jimmy G versus the Chiefs. Glad we put him on the list now. Yeah. Got some quick shot points for it because, unfortunately, season-ending ACL injury. So rough to see.
So unnecessary, too.
Yeah, that game was fantastic. I watched every play from that game this week, and the teams were a lot closer than the score indicated until that moment. And, from that point on in the game, the wind was totally out in the sails of really both teams. It was just a major bummer.
It's tough.
So that's a hit on the floor play for William. Moving on to our last category, Ted Ginn. He got a moonshot touchdown, but finished wide receiver 38. We're going to call it a miss on the moonshot, but I get a point for the TD. Tariq Cohen, RB 34. I'm going to give that a miss too. Unfortunately, didn't quite get there. He's almost got in the end zone, but did not. Charles Clay, another one who missed a couple of red zone targets and end zone targets.
He dropped a pass that was right on the numbers in the end zone, but yeah, I mean, they were clearly hitting the tight ends, but which was the tight end that ended up scoring?
Kroom.
Yes, obviously that was the one I should have chosen as my moonshot.
Yeah.
Next week,
you'll definitely be taking them. Also, Ivory had a touchdown. Oh my gosh, the Bills, no one had that. So, in our little quick shots Draftaholics game, as we call it, we've got 17 points for yours truly. George with 16 points, William with 10. The way we count that is 5 points for a draft win, 2 points for a draft runner-up. Each quick shot that hits, we get 1 point, and each moonshot that gets a TD, you get an additional point. So that D-Jax week 1 pick from George just keeps on keeping on. Really boosted him up the rankings in the first 2 weeks, and me and George right now feeling like we have the lead there. So I want to go to our one lineup to rule them all, and there are some weeks like this, guys. There were a lot of sharp bettors. I read that the top 10 most bet teams, 8 of the 10 of them lost outright this week, not just against the spread. So sometimes even the sharps, like us, get it wrong.
Not to mention, I think the Vikings Bills was the biggest upset in Vegas line NFL history.
So what does that tell you? It's an outlier in terms of what happened. We don't feel like our process was totally off. In fact, the rest of the industry felt the same way. One thing we were talking about off air, though, is that sometimes when a wave gets this big, it can just be strategy to run the other way.
Right.
You know, there were so many people clamoring for the Vikings and the run game of the Vikings, regardless of Dalvin Cook's injury.
Right.
Being a smash. We called it. It just didn't happen. So
maybe the formula that we were talking about, playing the defense and the running back against the Bills, just proves to not be a sustainable formula.
Also, when you have Josh Allen being a running quarterback in a way that I didn't really expect, running quarterbacks are not great to play against defensively.
Yeah.
So Carson Wentz, Dalvin Cook, who you could pivot to either Gio or Latavius, Chris Thompson, T.Y. Hilton, Nelson Aguilar, Sammy Watkins, Jared Cook. Kamara in the flex was really the only bright spot, and the Vikings 3 points. So you really get about 75% of the cash rate on DK or FanDuel. We did have a pivot lineup, which did even worse, so we're giving it a D grade. Hey, that's what we do. There are a lot of pivot lineups that we were talking about that didn't quite make it into the one lineup that were so close. So, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. We're going to roll with it. We're going to get better. We are going to keep the process the same, and we're not going to tilt when the situation doesn't call for it.
Hey, I give us a D for doing great.
Moving on. Getting over. All right. So next, we're going to do what we do best, a Week 4 draft with all of the top players, and then we're getting into our quick shots so that you have all the best plays of the week. Coming right up. All right, and just like that, we have moved on to Week 4. So, of course,
they're nice. They're really seamless.
Right.
Happens.
They just happen. And it's the magic of movies that all the time in between you just get to avoid as the viewer there or the listener, of course. So we do want to say for our first-time listeners, our first-time viewers, the way that you find us on the social sphere is at Draftaholics Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Make sure to smash that subscribe button. If you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, any of the other gazillion podcast apps out there, we're on there. Please tap subscribe. And if you feel especially generous, you can help our numbers even more by tapping subscribe, rating, and review.
Hey, that
5 stars, that'd be awesome. And give us a little review. Anything that lets us know how we're doing. And if we helped you out, that'd be even better. Maybe you had a one lineup to rule them all based on ours that did a little better than ours. We love to hear that stuff. And, of course, if you have any crazy drafts on draft.com or any crazy DFS lineups that you can't believe the strategy behind, hit us up. We'll check it out. And so with that said, let's move on to our matchups to watch. We know that you guys have many other podcast articles that you read every week, so we won't bore you with every matchup of the week, our little slate breakdown. But we do love certain matchups as fans, as fantasy analysts. It could be a team versus a team, a player versus a team, or a player versus a player, such as a wide receiver cornerback matchup we love to see. So, George, I want to start with you. What's your Week 4 matchup to watch?
I think it's going to be Josh Rosen versus Earl Thomas in the Seahawks versus Cardinals.
Is he going to be on the team? Earl Thomas.
Earl Thomas.
I keep hearing that he's going to get traded. Didn't he bow to the Cowboys bench and all this stuff?
He did bow to the Cowboys bench. You know, just like I hope for a Le'Veon trade this week, I don't think it's going to happen this week. I think it takes a little bit more time to flush out a superstar trade like a Le'Veon or an Earl Thomas. So I'm anticipating Earl Thomas being there. Earl Thomas is demanding the Defensive Player of the Year award right now. 3 interceptions through 3 games, 18 tackles, I think 4 or 5 batted passing balls. Josh Rosen, obviously a stud at UCLA, came in and successfully led the Cardinals to another loss. That whole Chase Edmonds, David Johnson debate, we can say that for another time, but that was just ridiculous play calling by Mike McCoy. Yeah, absolutely. But the Seahawks have allowed 5.6 net yards per pass attempt this year, 7th best. It's going to be a tough first matchup for Josh, but I don't. It also doesn't help that David Johnson is a solid RB2 right now when he was a month ago, a top 3 running back preseason. So, hopefully he can lean on Larry Fitzgerald. Ricky Seals-Jones had a catch for a touchdown. Christian Kirk looked pretty good. But yeah, I'm excited to see a full game of Josh Rosen. I think Sam Bradford was trending down. And this is their next shot. This is why they drafted him for a time like this. And this will be a big test.
Yeah, I'm especially excited for this matchup as well. Not just for Rosen, but in terms of Earl Thomas's play on the field, pay the man.
Yeah.
Off-field stuff aside with how the antics and whatnot, he's incredible on the field. The idea that David Johnson is being benched for a missed block in the third quarter, why is he blocking at all?
Right.
He should be out for a pass. I know that's a simplified argument, but that's so frustrating.
Yes.
It feels like one of us could step in as coach when you hear something like that. Maybe it's not true, but it certainly feels that way when we hear something ridiculous like that. William, how about you? What's your week 4 matchup?
I feel like I'm picking a kind of sneaky, high-scoring game here. I feel like a lot of people are going to be talking about Giants-Saints because of the names. Maybe see if the Pats can recover against the Dolphins. Did anyone see that tweet, by the way, of Brady with his new jersey, 1 and 2?
Oh,
someone put a hyphen in the middle. Oh, it was hilarious. But anyway, so those storylines are exciting. But I think Cincinnati, who's been performing pretty well, is going to have a good chance up against Atlanta's banged-up defense. They only have one starting safety right now. They're talking about rotating some special teams guys in there into the secondary. That does not mesh well, especially if the Bengals have A.J. Green. He's playing in a dome in Georgia. I mean, let's talk about stories, but it's definitely one of those opportunities. A.J., he'll catch 4 touchdowns one week and then the next week not do anything. I feel like this might be one of those weeks where he catches 4 touchdowns. I know George would definitely like that.
In our season long,
for
sure.
Exactly. But, playing in a dome, I feel like the Bengals have an opportunity to be a really high-scoring offense in this game, and so do the Falcons. I feel like it's going to be a shootout, and it's going to be a great game to watch.
I agree.
Speaking of like Tom Brady, the 1-2 for 1 win, 2 losses, do you think Antonio Callaway could just slap on a dash and another 1 for the Browns and just be 1-1-1?
Sure. Maybe. I don't know. It would be a little bit better if there was actually a 1-11.
Yeah, and if this were the MLB, they just put it all in Braille because everyone can see that.
That's right.
That's for another time. My matchup to watch, guys, Raiders and Browns. Baker Mayfield's first start. We can't say enough about the change in atmosphere, the change in energy the moment he stepped on the field.
Yeah.
I know we've had one episode air since we last saw the Browns win a game, but I mean, it was just an exciting half of play. It was just really cool to see a team that we could say was bordering on competency look like a winning team for 2 quarters.
Yeah.
We're not going to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
There are some advanced metrics that I'm really excited about, but the sample size is too small.
Right.
With the Raiders.
How long until Baker gets that LeBron James massive ad treatment?
Rashard Higgins mentioned the same exact thing. They said that Baker Mayfield's going to get that king wall, as they call it in Cleveland.
The king wall, that's right.
I would love to see it. I mean, I just love jumping on a hype train like this. I mean, not in terms of betting
it's
necessarily,
fun.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to ride. It's what the NFL needs. It's awesome.
And the bottom line is the Raiders are struggling on defense, and they have a few plays that they really want back on offense. I think Marshawn Lynch said in the post-game interview that they feel like they're a couple of plays away from being one of the most explosive offenses in the league. If you watch them on film, I can see what he's feeling. The numbers just do not bear that out right now. So I think Baker Mayfield finds himself in a winnable matchup. William went as far off air to say that he sees them in a positive game script. This is how we're already viewing the Browns. Like, they can just be like this winning second half team.
But I want to talk about their defense, too. I mean, you can't deny that the Browns defense has been excellent. And if they're able to hold off the Raiders like they held off the Jets until Baker came in and scored and have Baker from the beginning of the game, how can you not see the possibility of a positive game script here?
There's certainly a possibility. I just don't know, as a betting man, if I bet on it.
Yeah.
It's certainly the most exciting matchup for me. I think there are a ton of Week 4 matchups that I just can't wait as a fan, as an analyst. As a reminder to you fantasy season-long players, no Panthers, no Washington, because they are on their bye week.
Right. So already, Week 4 kind of feels crazy, but here we go.
Yeah, just make sure to get them out of your lineup there. All right, now that we have our matchups to watch this week, we are going to move into our Week 4 draft. This is what the Draftaholics do best. We are finding player value even in a 5-player, 3-team draft. I really like what George did especially. We'll get to that in the Istics there. So first off, the winner getting first pick again. This feels really good, guys. I start off with...
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Alvin Kamara, no problem at all there. And then we had William in the second slot taking Melvin Gordon, and George with Michael Thomas. So 2 Saints in the first round there. To finish out the teams there, George got Todd Gurley, Odell Beckham, Pat Mahomes, and Gio Bernard, that really interesting last round pick. And William, Julio Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Brown, and Deshaun Watson. I had Saquon, he fell to the 6th spot. Love that. And then Tyreek Hill, Drew Brees, and Juju Smith-Schuster. He doesn't find himself in 5-player, 3-team drafts all the time. But after that Monday night performance, I think with one of the highest target shares in the entire NFL, he is a great play there. So as we dive right into the Istics, that's statistics, heuristics, and logistics based on the different ways that we analyze player value and team evaluation within the NFL, I do have to say that projection-wise, Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley create a target floor that is really, really hard to compete against. So, of course, Tyreek Hill is a traditional ceiling play, and Drew Brees is as tried and true as possible. But it's really Alvin and Saquon Barkley that really made up the core of the points that I hope to get. I can't always expect these big pop weeks from a quarterback. I got 40 points from Drew Brees. I'm certainly not expecting that in a median projection. But as far as reception-based floor, I believe that those two as a combination come out on top. Now, from a value perspective, I don't think I crushed it, and that's why I keep referring back to that logistics argument that George is going to make. But I feel like I gave myself a great floor, a great ceiling, and the median that, of course, based on my projections, puts me at number 1. How about you, William? What's your heuristic, your strategy?
Well, my strategy was somewhat dictated to me this week, as I was told I was not allowed to take Rob Gronkowski.
It's true.
No,
it's true.
I totally understand, though, and I should pivot away from what I feel like is a great combination of floor and ceiling in those wide receivers. And hey, I was able to end up with Julio Jones and Antonio Brown. I'm pretty okay with them as my wide receivers. And drafting from the middle slot, I want to talk about that a little bit in terms of strategy here. In a 3-person draft in particular, both ends get to, take 2 players at the same time. So drafting in the middle, you really have to reach a little bit. If you're sure you wanted a guy, I talked about Ezekiel Elliott being my cash smash. I knew George still needed a running back, so I knew he wasn't going to be there if it went around. Now, maybe George wasn't going to take Zeke this week, but because he still needed a running back and he was about to have 2 picks, there's a very good chance that he was going to.
Now, your process was right on, and it's something that over the long term is going to work for you, but George played it perfectly.
He did, yeah.
And that's what I want to point out here. George, tell us your story before I get too effusive over here.
No, get effusive. Obfuscate away.
Don't make fun of my vocabulary here.
No.
If there's anything clear, it's that George has a great story about his lineup.
Yeah. My stories were a lot better when we had long drafts with 16 or 20 people. My stories are a lot shorter when it's just 5 players. But really, if I knew that you or Will were going to zig, I zigged with you a little bit in terms of the Pat Mahomes. Matt, you were taking Tyreek Hill. I said, well, Tyreek's going to who's throwing the ball to Tyreek? Okay, let me take him. It was a little bit of my story was based on whatever story you were throwing out at me. Like William, but in a different way. Williams was beforehand, do not draft Tyreek or Rob, and then have at it. Mine was more of, what are y'all drafting? Okay, well then those players won't be successful unless this player is successful. So yeah, mine was based on that. Also, matchups. I've been watching games, and the teams that my players are going to be playing against tend to have bad defenses and/or tend to have big over-unders. That would be Gio Bernard against the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons continue to lose star defensive players. They're down 3 now after Keanu Neal and a couple others. I don't know why I'm blanking right now. But, I mean, Pat Mahomes against Denver. I mean, Pat Mahomes is just a surefire the past couple weeks, and I think he'll continue. Same with Atlanta. The Saints defense is kind of porous. Odell, as I said, as you'll see in our later episode this week, I'm expecting him to make that he's been beating 2 out of 3 guys like 3 or 4 times so far, where he could have gone for a 75-yard touchdown, and instead he had a 35-yard gain. I see that happening this week. I see a couple of Vance McDonald's coming out of Odell Beckham, if that makes any sense.
Some big yak touchdowns.
Yeah, some big yak touchdowns. And Michael Thomas goes the same with the porous Giants defense. So this week my story was matchups versus what did y'all do?
Yeah, and the strategy there, I know it's not heuristic, but there is a great strategy move by George to wait on the running back position until that final round, because he knew his opponents had already filled up the position. That's just an easy play there. He got a really strong, I believe, a quick shot play this time. So Gio Bernard, that 5th round pick there, my favorite pick of the entire draft. Okay, guys, speaking of quick shots, we are going to be right back with that imaginary basketball and that satellite basketball hoop. Just a moment here. Where's the air basketball? Where's that ball?
Oh, I have an injured finger.
So yeah.
Toss it back and forth and then...
But you can still hit that crossover. Yeah. Shoot it up.
Good thing everything's imaginary.
Hey, there it is. The Draftaholics Quickshots. Guys, these are the individuals that we think are going to be smash hits, are going to be players that you need to fade in our Faded Glory section, or it's a player that's going to be well under average ownership that's going to take you up the ranks, possibly to that $1 million lineup. We finish off with one lineup to rule them all. It's our best week 4 predictions. Here we go. First off is Cash Smash. These are players that you could have in every draft lineup, every DFS lineup, if you're just playing a few. These are players that it would take something extraordinary for them to not reach their floor, and they have an absolute top 5 ceiling at their position. We'll start with William. What's your Cash Smash play, week 4?
My Cash Smash is Zeke Elliott. I feel like the Cowboys, especially because they're favored at home, it's a really good opportunity for Zeke to score. The Lions are ranked 3rd in combined line yards, which basically puts the offensive line versus the defensive line to show a good situation for a running back. That means Zeke has a really good opportunity to break through this offensive line. There were some amazing gaps. We watched them they were on Monday Night Football last week.
No, they played the Seahawks at I believe, the 4 o'clock slot.
Yeah, they basically were able to create some push up front. I feel like they're going to be able to do that again this week. I think they're going to get up early and use Zeke to run out the clock in the second half, which is a great opportunity to have a lot of scoring in fantasy. Plus, I think he might have some touchdowns. I'm smashing a lot of Zeke this week. I feel like he's priced pretty well in DraftKings, and I'm going to have him a lot of places. I even took him in our head-to-head draft here against the fellow Draftaholics.
Now, it's good that we play this quick shots game and we get points for it, because I would actually fade Zeke this week. I think one of the things that I noticed as I was looking at the all-22, there's absolutely no respect for Dak Prescott's pass game right now.
Right.
So if the Cowboys are going to be successful, it will be through Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
That said, I think teams are going to continue to favor the run even more. We're going to see a standard 8 front box.
Yes.
Which means 8 players in the linebacker or the lineman position, just totally stacked against Zeke. He's good enough to get over that.
Zeke is actually himself. He's talked about liking stacked boxes because you just need to make one guy miss, and then you're in the secondary. So
there you go.
I think he has the opportunity to do that a little bit more than anyone else.
We'll see it on the standings this week, what happens. George, how about you? I'm seeing a very interesting Cash Smash.
That's all I got to say, guys. Odell Beckham Jr.
Was 13. That his dance move right there?
That was his dance move. Now I could stand up and do it.
No.
It's that
save the viewers.
Yeah. I have I don't even want to rough my passer. So, I just got to be careful over here. I don't want to get anything hurt. Odell Beckham's gonna kill. New Orleans is the league worst against wide receivers. They've given up 9 touchdowns to wide receivers through 3 weeks, guys. Matt Ryan just dropped 374 yards and 5 touchdowns on them. Calvin Ridley had a day with 3 in week 1. Mike Evans had a huge week, 7 catches for almost 150 yards and a touchdown. Odell is ready to feast. If you go back and watch Odell from 2 years ago, one of my favorite plays Odell is in the slot, and he has a cross route through the middle of the field. He catches it, and he just burns 3 people in a row. That he's burned 2 out of 3, 3 or 4 times this year, and he just hasn't burned that last person. And he could have caught another 60 yards and a touchdown after that third person. It's gonna happen this week, guys. He is so fast and so good. Oh, it's scary. I don't know if I'm playing him in any leagues, but I hope I'm not, because he's just gonna destroy.
Yeah. Odell, one of the best receivers in the game when healthy. He looked incredibly strong in that game against Houston. A lot of sharp bettors had Houston in that game. The Giants proved them wrong. So I want to talk about his LSU teammate. It's Jarvis Landry.
Juice.
Guys, this is the first time that an offense has been specifically and purposefully manufactured for Jarvis Landry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great anecdote from the final year of Ryan Tannehill, so that's 2016 season, Ryan Tannehill's QB season with the Dolphins. The coaches went to him and said, Ryan, you got to stop throwing to Jarvis Landry. This is training camp. We need other people to get looks. And the very next play, Tannehill threw to Jarvis Landry. That shows two things to me. That Jarvis Landry gets separation on the routes that he's given. And two, the Dolphins did not want to create an offense based around Jarvis Landry.
Right.
I can say specifically and unequivocally that John Dorsey, the GM of the Browns, and Hugh Jackson, the coach of the Browns, want this offense to move through Jarvis Landry, and the opportunity shows that. He's number 5 in weighted opportunity. That's market share of targets and market share of air yards that are weighted based on predictability. He's also number 2 in number 2 in weighted opportunity, number 5 in positive air yards, and number 7 total in targets. This is just a pure wide receiver 1 that has a quarterback that can hopefully be much more efficient than we've seen. Get him even if he's high ownership this week.
Hey, Matt, speaking of John Dorsey, do you remember that part in Hard Knocks when what seemed like the intern team of the Browns went up to John Dorsey and Hugh Jackson? Question? The trivia question, exactly. Yes. And John, they were like, who's had the most touchdowns in the past, 4 or 5 or 6 years? And he was like, oh, Jarvis Landry? And they're like, no, Des Bryant. But, their minds, like you said, are focused on number 80, and number 80 will feast the whole year.
Yeah, he's actually number 1 in the entire NFL in red zone target share.
Wow.
So, as we said, this is a manufactured Jarvis Landry offense with a quarterback who can hopefully get him the ball. That's our cash smash. We are moving on. Faded Glory. This is a player who's dominated the first few weeks or just last week. It's going to be an expected high ownership total based on that opportunity, but we are fading them. We are off them this week and possibly weeks beyond that. So, George, I want you to start us off here.
So last week I had in the podcast I said that I think Tom Brady's going to go off for 300 plus passing yards because he didn't have it in weeks 1 or 2. He was close. He had 250 both weeks. He had I think 2 touchdowns or 1 or 2 touchdowns both weeks. He went for 133 yards against the Detroit Lions this week. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Guys, Miami's defense is not bad. They've only allowed 2 passing touchdowns through 3 weeks to the Jets, to Tennessee, and to Oakland. So I am completely fading Tom Brady for the foreseeable future. One of my best friends. Wow, that's great.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, one of my best friends last week offered Tom Brady for Pat Mahomes in essentially a 2 QB draft. It's actually our home draft. And why would you accept that? Why would you accept a top 1 or 2 quarterback for somebody who I think is the QB 25 right now? Josh Allen is outperforming Tom Brady. Guys, pump the brakes.
Yeah, we're going to see a ceiling week eventually. I don't think it's against it's against
Miami.
I almost said the wrong player, of course. So, William, before I trip over my words anymore, your faded glory.
My faded glory is Jordy Nelson, who it was exciting to see him score well last week. And the Raiders' defense is bad, so there are going to be passing opportunities in Oakland. But Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1. I think that we had a situation where it was a boom-bust kind of week. Nelson showed he definitely can flash, but he's going to be really high risk. They have decent matchups in the next few weeks. They're going to be shut down by the Browns this week. We already talked about it earlier. Not shut down necessarily, but I really think that the Browns defense is better than people are letting off, and I think that the Raiders, to quote Marshawn Lynch, 1 step from elite offense is not that elite. So I'm fading Jordy this week. He's definitely too boomer bust to ride, and I'm not going to put money on him to score. Why? Who can say it's not Amari Cooper's 4 touchdown week? He gets one of those every year. If you can't choose either one, I'm not going to put any money on Jordy this week. That's why he's my fade.
Well, one of the strategy things that you're seeing pop up over and over on these cash smash and faded glory plays is we're trying to distinguish who is a new good offense and new good defense and who is newly bad at one of those things. So we've already identified the Dolphins as possibly a defense that has made its way up the ranks, and therefore maybe someone we fade or personnel we fade more against the Dolphins than in the past. I feel the same exact way against the Tennessee Titans. They added 2 defensive playmakers in their first 2 rounds of the draft, highlighted by that second round pick, Harold Landry, who I think was one of the best value picks of the entire draft. You also add one of the biggest off-the-field components in Dean Pease, the long Ravens coordinator, who actually retired and then came out of retirement in January to work for the Titans. I don't think that is a small deal at all. This used to be a defense that we kind of targeted as someone who could have a pop week. I no longer think that's the case, and I think that Zach Ertz is the player that they target as a player to shut down this week.
Why wouldn't they? Who else is going to catch passes?
You know, you're talking about leader in opportunity. It's actually Jared Cook in Oakland, the tight end, who's getting the lead in opportunity. It's the same in Philadelphia with Zach Ertz getting more opportunity now than Nelson Aguilar, and I think that will be the game plan of Philadelphia. I just don't think it's going to be able to happen. I'm actually fading all Philadelphia receivers until further notice right now. I think Nelson Aguilar moving back to the outside with the presence of Jordan Matthews is a problem. I think Zach Ertz obviously got catches over the middle, which, again, Jordan Matthews isn't a fantasy relevant player, but he's eating away at that target share. It's going to change with Wentz, and so I don't want to play Zach Ertz in any leagues this week. He's still going to be a tight end. Goddard had a huge week. I think 1 overall this week. So
people are eating, and plus against the Titans, I like it.
So we're going to fade Zach Ertz. Moving on here to the floor play. This is a player who has some guaranteed touches, some ugly touches sometimes. It might be a bad matchup. It might be a second on the totem pole as far as their team positional needs, but we still like them as a flex play in our lineup this week. I'll start us off with Austin Eckler. He's number 6 in receiving yards and number 10 in receptions, while also being number 1 in yards per touch. That includes his rushes there. So he's being incredibly efficient, but he's actually number 16 in red zone touches per game. So what that tells us is, oh, by the way, Melvin is top 5 in red zone touches per game.
Wow.
So it's not like they are shying away from Melvin Gordon. It just means that we are in a hyper-efficient offense that once we get close to that goal line, running backs are being used. So that is a perfect scenario right there. We have a primary catching running back on a team that's hyper-efficient, getting to the goal line, and then likes to use a small running back in the red zone. We can't necessarily guarantee the workload every week, but we can guarantee the quality of that workload. And that's what we're going for with Eckler, my floor play this week. William, how about you?
I like that. That's an interesting approach because people talk about like touchdown-dependent players not really having a floor, but in your case, talking about high-value touches, that elevates that floor. My floor play is Gio Bernard. He excelled last week, and I feel like I'm pointing to him specifically as a floor play because of his usage in the passing game. I feel like he has a floor similar to someone like Christian McCaffrey, who's getting opportunity in carrying the ball, but he's also catching 5-6 passes a game, especially with Mixon out. I think he's also still pretty cheaply priced. I think he's still at like 10.5% on DraftKings and FanDuel.
Right.
So you can definitely slot him in your lineup as your floor guy, guaranteed to get points, make back his money, maybe even elevate to that smash level, but definitely going to get some receptions, which give him a floor. And also Atlanta's banged up defense. I still feel like Cincinnati is going to have a great opportunity this week. They've given up 36% of targets specifically to the running back. So if Giovanni is filling that void is filling that role in Cincinnati, and they have an opportunity to score well against Atlanta, I just feel like he's definitely going to score points this week. That's why he's my floor play. George, who's your floor dude?
Well, I want to go back to Austin Eckler real quick. I just want to say, I know at the beginning of the episode we talked about how this is like the year of the quarterback. I think that something that contributes to that is the emergence of these RB2s on the team, whether it be Austin Eckler. Alfred Blue's been playing. His snap count percentage has been way up. Someone like Chase Edmonds is getting a look, even though it's 3rd and 2. I mean, despite the fact that, we can talk about the David Johnson thing again or whatever, but I think it's these pass-catching backs that are relieving quarterbacks of all this pressure, and it's people like Austin Eckler that are going to be good floor plays for the entire year, not just for week 4. Mm-hmm. But speaking of that, Tevin Coleman is my floor play. With Devonta Freeman out, he had 20 touches week 2 and 17 touches in week 3. I expect the Bengals to focus on taking away Matt Ryan. He's been really solid the past couple weeks. I think they'll probably take away Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I think Sanu may have a chance at a good game, or Austin Hooper, but Christian McCaffrey just gashed the Bengals' offensive line for 192 yards. I think Tevin Coleman has a potential to do something like that. He's certainly good. I thought he was going to have a great week last week against New Orleans. That didn't happen. He didn't look terribly great. There were a couple of plays that were just blown up behind the line for like -3 and 4 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen as often this week, so he's my floor play.
Yeah, pass-catching running backs that are guaranteed any sort of workload as just a traditional running back, that's always a great floor play. And along these same lines here, what we really want in these running back twos are to find them in DFS when they make sense. Right. One of the things that we'll harp on, especially as we head back into the offseason, which, if you can believe it, will be sooner rather than later. The season will be over soon, unfortunately. These are players that often have these pop weeks that get players who have them in season-long leagues really excited, inflating their next year ADP.
Right.
So we're going to talk a lot as we get into the months ahead about how we actually want to fade those guys as they get too expensive in the off-season. But during the season, they're great, especially in a weekly game like DFS.
Yeah, who'd have thunk that Austin Eckler would have been a play at all? I mean, last year he was a straight up backup running back. He was just a stash on your bench in case something happened to
what's funny, George? There is a section of the draft. We'll show it in 2019. I promise you. There's a section of the draft where these RB2s all start to settle. It's right around running back 37 to running back 50. And the bottom line is, the minute you creep out of that zone, it's bias. It's essentially the pop weeks that are making people pay extra. So we might see Gio move into that running back 29 to 35 range. That's when we have to be careful and not overpay next year. Right now, Tevin Coleman, while Devonta's out, we're already overthinking it. It's a huge floor play. So finally, the moonshot, guys. This is the player that we expect to be third or lower in terms of ownership for their own team in DFS this week, but we think that they can be a top 24 asset in wide receiver or running back, or top 12 in terms of QB, tight end, or defense. So, moonshot play. William, start with you.
My moonshot is Mr. Antonio Callaway, and obviously my new favorite team in the NFL.
Yeah, they're your
Cleveland
fave.
Browns. Yeah, I know. I really like the way that the team is trending, but specifically with Antonio Callaway, he was on 80.6 and 89.6% of the Browns' offensive snaps in the last two games. Week 3, his stat line wasn't great. He only had 4 for 20, which is why I think some people might be off him. But when Baker came in, he was clearly the wide receiver too. Just if you watch the game, he did have some dropped passes. Mm-hmm. He was who Baker was looking to, and I feel like he's also going to be the opportunity to open the field up. He's got extreme speed. He could be the one to catch that one deep ball. I think he actually had an end zone target, like a deep shot that they misconnected on. Now they're going to have an entire week to work on it. I think Antonio Callaway is a fun moonshot, and we may be talking about him as the number 2 option on this offense, surpassing David Njoku coming up soon. So I like slotting him in there as my moonshot.
I have him as my number 2 until I see Baker change his mind.
Yeah, sure.
George, how about you? Moonshot.
Yeah, shout out to William Spinato here. My moonshot's Michael Crabtree. He may be the wide receiver on the Ravens, but John Brown has been popping. And also Alex Collins and Buck Allen make for an RBBC that's has weirdly been a timeshare of 50-50 in terms of snap percentage. Buck Allen's getting a touchdown every week. It's ridiculous. Crabtree hasn't topped 70 yards this week, 70 yards and any week in the past 3 weeks. He has had 1 touchdown, but I do like his target share. He's had 26 targets through 3 weeks, 7 receptions this last week. I certainly see a potential of popping for another 7 receptions for a touchdown and maybe 90 or 100 yards. The Steelers' defense was gashed last night in the second half by Ryan Fitzpatrick. They gave up touchdowns to Tyreek Hill and Chris Conley in week 2. There were 3 receivers that week on the Chiefs that had either a touchdown and or 100 yards receiving. And Mike Evans obviously went ballistic towards the end of the game last night, along with
Godwin had
Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin.
Had a touchdown.
Yeah, Chris Godwin 4-yard reception towards the end. I mean, crazy. And Crabtree has a chance.
Sure.
Yeah, red zone opportunities always good, and especially when we see that boom bust play of John Brown moving up the ownership ranks.
Right.
I would not be surprised to see John Brown more heavily owned than Michael Crabtree.
That's the value. Guy. Yeah, dude, just want to point out a stat that we discovered earlier. The Steelers and the Ravens are ranked number 1 and 2. Ravens first, Steelers second in terms of pace of play in the NFL. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the Steelers, but the Ravens are up there too. So there's definitely some offense going around.
Yeah, watching Big Ben run up to the line is really, really something to watch. By the way, his 4.24 John Ross speed is exceptional.
Does it have to do with the sleep number that you were talking about?
Oh no, the sleep number. There was a hilarious amount of mid-30s quarterback runs last time, mid-30s at age. It felt like it was in slow motion, and you were fearful every time they passed that blue line on Monday Night Football. But hey, it was effective. There was a lot of scoring.
Yeah,
I'll finish us with Trey Burton.
Boom.
So Sterling Shepard was actually my first pick here, and with the injury to Evan Ingram, we kind of felt like it was too chalky to give a moonshot to. But if I had to really choose a great play at possibly third on his team in ownership, it's Sterling Shepard with Evan Ingram out. But that's
we
not
all agree
here.
Yeah.
Trey Burton here is going to be a beneficiary of Taylor Gabriel getting knocked up toward. Oh,
knocked up!
Taylor Gabriel is pregnant.
Congratulations,
that's the next
Taylor.
childbearing narrative in the NFL is that Taylor Gabriel is
Taylor
pregnant.
Gabriel was knocked in the head pretty hard, and it looked like he may not miss time, but I think that there's two factors at play here. He's not 100%, and the vertical passing offense of Matt Nagy and the Bears offense needs to shift a little bit. If there's one thing that we've seen the Chiefs, the most successful offense in the league, shift towards, it's horizontal backfield movement. And I think there isn't a team that could benefit more in the NFL from the same type of play calling than the Bears with Jordan Howard, Trey Burton, and Tariq Cohen. I think Trey Burton is the biggest beneficiary opportunity-wise if Gabriel misses snaps and playtime, and I think he could see more red zone targets and vertical targets than we've seen. I see a 6-target floor for him. I'm going to learn how to speak eventually, but I will tell you that I think he is going to catch a TD this week.
Or throw one.
Or throw one.
You never know. With Trey Burton, he might.
we need a Chicago special to go with the Philly special there. That'd be great.
And apparently the original, the Brown special.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, the Brown special.
The lefty special.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my moonshot for the week. If I can spit it out, that's Trey Burton. Those are our quick shots, guys. That is the way that we take down and narrow down our player pool for the week.
Yeah.
We can't always pick our favorite plays in every one lineup to rule them all, but we create the player pool based on these quick shots. We can't tell you how much it helps our process just by doing this every week. All right, we're almost done with our week 4 show here. We're going to go into our one DFS lineup to rule them all. Okay, now we can get into our one DFS lineup to rule them all.
Oh, it rules.
Yes, it certainly does. And guys, remember, just as a reminder, this is earlier in the week that you get this information. Mesh this with the great research from your Evan Silvas, your Rich Freebars, your JJ Zacharisons. They have these incredible weekly reports that you have to check out. Your research is not done unless you do that. Then mesh that with what you hear from us with the collaborative research of the Draftaholics, and then you're going to have a much better picture of who the industry is on, who the industry may disagree on, and what players are just unequivocal, don't leave your lineup without them type plays this week. So with that said, William, break down our one lineup to rule them all and tell us the percentages that each player took up in the overall salary.
Sure. So our quarterback this week is Drew Brees, kind of going back to the well there. He costs 14.5% of our budget. Our running backs are Carlos Hyde and Giovanni Bernard at 11.3 and 10.7%, taking advantage of my favorite team, the Browns, obviously, and getting involved in the Cincinnati Bengals game. We have him stacked with one of our wide receivers, Tyler Boyd, who was only 9.7%. Michael Thomas is stacked with Drew Brees. He was our most expensive player, 15% of our budget. We're hitting Jarvis Landry. He's also stacked with Hyde, 11.7%. And Trey Burton at tight end, just like we were talking about in our quick shots. He was only 9.3%. And then we're flexing Sterling Shepard, like we were talking. Evan Ingram being out. Odell being up against Marshawn Lattimore, I think he's got a great opportunity to score here. And our defense is the Chargers. They were a little bit cheaper than the other elite defenses at only 7.3%. I feel really good about this lineup. I feel like we're taking advantage of the games that we think are definitely going to be high scoring and grabbing a couple players from each of those games, stacking them together. It just happened to work out pricing wise that we had those 3 stacks, and I really like it.
Yeah, I want to be clear that we are okay playing Tyler Boyd even if we hear that AJ Green's good to go.
Yes, exactly. I think he obviously has much more of a chance to blow up if AJ Green is out. But
of course.
So far he's been
much higher ownership too.
Yes. He's been very, you actually might want to pivot away from him if AJ Green is out. I don't know. We'd have to do a little more research there, but he's been performing really well. He's had 6 or more targets in the last 2 games. He's getting red zone looks, deep balls. He's an excellent opportunity. Pick him up on your waiver wire in your home league.
Oh, yeah. He must be 100%
He must be
in all size leagues there. The other play I really think is going to hit for us is this Carlos Hyde, Jarvis Landry stack. We sound like Browns stands all of a sudden. And I was the one who said that the Jets were going to make the playoffs a couple weeks ago, and they look like they're moving the opposite direction. So I'm kind of eating the L here, but I just feel like the offense is going to move in a different way, in a different efficiency level than we've seen before in Cleveland, and that's why we're going to play before the ownership spikes like crazy in a week or 2.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see a change in pricing next week in the Browns. I think that's probably the safest call that we can make either way.
Yeah, and before we head out of this lineup and on to the Week 4 games, William, I have to ask you, what the heck happened to your finger?
Well, I don't know if anyone out there in the digital universe knows, but on Sundays I bartend, and we have a kind of fantasy football watching situation. And
yeah, we keep them company because we're good friends.
It's great. My whole league showed up last week. It was awesome. But I was peeling an orange. The orange decided to fall out of my hand, and I continued peeling my finger. Took a nice little chunk out of there. Had a tourniquet on it for the rest of the day. It seemed like it was okay, but just got that that Dermabond, that
the glue,
glue, exactly.
There was
nothing left to stitch.
Are you like the white JPP now?
You know what? It's very funny, but I actually talked about this last night while we were watching the game. I was like, if JPP can do it without 2 fingers, I can cater tonight with 1 finger.
You can.
What a trooper!
I'm gonna be fine, but that's
fine. What a trooper! All right,
I'm keeping it above my heart.
Yeah. I just had to ask why he was like holding his finger out like he was ET with the glowing finger. There.
Trying to keep the swelling down.
I'm just giving you a hard time, buddy. We hope your finger and your hand heals up
Thanks,
just
guys.
as nicely as it was before. I don't know what that means. Your hand and finger was normal before, now it's not. All right, I have to get out of here so I can learn how to speak English, so I can learn how to not trip over my words. As always, give us a subscribe. I literally can't do it. Give us a subscribe. Subscribe to us on YouTube, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, wherever you are listening to or watching us. Guys, my name is Matt Savoca, the one who can't speak, at Draftaholic on Twitter. Who's on the big screen?
At George Slotin, I can speak.
And I'm William Spinato, at W Spinato on Twitter. 2 N's, 1 T.
Thanks for watching, guys. We will be back with our Week 5 Thursday mini before you know it. Guys, remember, Draftaholics, rolling is good.
That's your last day.